Hello there. This is Michael Merdad here, and it's time for Friday Night Spiritual Insights with Michael Merdad. We're coming to you live at 5. It's actually 5:30, but it sounds better to say live at 5, like we're an important news broadcast. But we're live here Friday. It's Friday afternoon or evening, 5:30, and in Sedona, live, coming to you. So thank you for joining us. And a couple quick things. One, last Sunday we did our live presentation from Unity of Sedona, and it was our Sunday service. And the Sunday services are usually a bit more, all of the work I do is kind of spiritual, obviously, in nature. But sometimes spiritual, and then you could say subtitled. Fridays are sort of subtitled psychology, self-help, healing, and so on. Where Sundays it's spirituality mixed with spiritual teachings of various teachers, Buddha, Jesus, whomever, it's spirituality, Christ consciousness, it's connecting with the divine. It's got that sort of thing. So last Sunday we did a talk on our Holiness versus Humanness was the title. And unfortunately, for maybe the first time ever, it might be only 1 and 2 times maybe at the most, but the broadcast didn't work. We had a technical glitch that happened with the equipment, and I apologize for that. So because we don't have that, and a lot of people were sort of going bonkers over it, it's kind of funny. You guys were sending in all these messages all week. What happened? It's not there. What do I do? Did Michael ascend? What happened? Did Illuminati's behind this? All these conspiracy stories and panic attacks and whatever. It's just, and we posted that that there was a glitch, but some people didn't read that. They just got all panicky. So I guess that's sort of flattering. So thank you. But the point is that I did a talk on that, holiness versus humanness, and folks that attended in person really loved it, but the folks that weren't there kind of missed out. And I felt pretty bad about that. I didn't like the idea of those folks not really being able to hear that, see that. So what I'm going to do, it's the first time I think I've ever done this, but what I'm going to do is try to, one of the attendees actually typed up some notes about what they really dug about the talk. So I'm going to not follow the notes, like read them, but I am going to use them as a reference so that I'm sharing with you some of the same points that were covered. I don't know that we can be really that successful because I'm not the type to read a script or whatever. I usually just go. So I'm going to do what I can, but certainly it'll be the best of both, where I'm going to give you some of the highlights from what I covered, but also just kind of spontaneous as well. But it is repeating somewhat the same talk, just somewhat. So if you were there Sunday, it'll be different. I know that because I don't really know what I'm going to say yet, honestly. So it'll be different for you if you attended, but for those of you who didn't see Sunday, it'll cover enough of that so you will not have missed out. I'm assuming it'll cover a lot of it anyway, as best we can. All right? So the gist of how I started that talk, if I recall correctly, is basically just sort of a recap on many things that I teach, something I often teach, which is, this is holiness versus humanness. And there's a lot of people on earth that try to make the humanness holy. Now, you could call that well-intended. You could say there's validity to it, becoming holy humans or whatever, and you can make it all kind of nice and lofty. You could make it about purifying the body, eating perfectly, exercising just right, and really trying to make the body holy. Here's the thing. The body cannot be made holy because it's already made from limited minds that thought they separated from God. No offense meant if you're a real humanist kind of person. Go watch Jack LaLanne or something, instead. Watch some exercise guru from the past, present, or whatever. Because you can't. The body was made, even though there's glorious symbolism to the body, That is holy, but it's only a holy reflection. It's a reflection of holiness. The body itself will die. Holiness cannot die. So what happened was we were once holy beings with God, brilliant light presence. And then we seem to have separated from God. We dreamt up the idea of separating. And when we did, that's what's called the fall, okay? It's not just the fall from Eden. That's a metaphor of the fall from our own divinity. So we don't have humanness yet. We're divine beings. Then we choose to separate. That's the fall from our divinity. So we fall and we become souls that are kind of wandering the universe, wondering what happened. We were once perfect divine beings, spirits. That's the word, is spirit. And then spirits became souls. So there's three bodies we have: a spiritual self, a soul self, and a human body self. So these three selves. The divine one is the spiritual one. The soul one is the one that thinks it lost some of its divinity and is now trying to find it again. That's why we use that term, the wandering soul, the evolving soul. How do you evolve if you're already holy? So it's a soul. The soul thinks, it believes it has forgotten who it was. So it's kind of on this evolving trajectory. But the problem is you can't really evolve if you're perfect. So really it's in a state of confusion. The first self is metaphorically in our upper three chakras. Like I said earlier, it's a symbolism. It's not glands or chakras that make you holy. You're far beyond anything your body could ever make you. You could say, oh my God, I'm going to one day have a glorious aura. I'm going to have chakras that have perfect color pitch to them, perfect color color tones and all. And they're going to be just musical, and my presence is going to be wow. My brain will be whole brained instead of left and right brain. Anything of that is still not your holiness. Holiness cannot be defined. Chakra this, right, left, up, down, male, female. It's way beyond that. It's a perpetual state of bliss, holiness, perfection, love. The rest is just glorified versions of it. It's nice versions of it, but that's about it. And I'm not dissing it. I'm saying your body will become spiritualized, but when it does, there's no body left. So you can't spiritualize the body and have the body still. So we have a lot of people trying to go, I'm going to go from humanness, to holiness. And it can't actually be done. I mean, you can try to become so perfected in a human frame that because of the work you do on yourself, your consciousness will grow, and then you could remember your divinity. But it's not because the body made you divine. It's working on yourself and all the lessons related to that, one of which would be the body's an illusion. So it's funny because you'd have to let the body go to the holiness. But it's all kind of paradoxical in some ways, but also it's not. It's also very clear and simple. The humanness was the result of, I have spirit, I have separated, became an evolving soul or a journeying soul. Then my journeying soul said, man, I feel so much pain and guilt and shame for having separated from my divinity. I feel so scared, afraid, that now I'm feeling pulled by the gravity of my thoughts. The gravity of my thoughts made me come to the earth plane and not just be a soul that's really pretty fantastic still, but not perfectly holy anymore, but fantastic. And my soul self became, it basically incarnated into bodies, into a body, but then bodies after lifetime after lifetime. So, we became bodies. But the problem is the body is it's an effect of the fall. So we fell into density because we fell into limiting beliefs about ourselves. Holy, unlimited, dense, limited. So the body is a statement of our being limited beings. It's a statement of, this is the fact. I am now officially a limited being. How can that become holy? If it becomes holy, you can't be the limited being anymore, which means you can't be a body anymore. So, this is a bit of what I was sharing. I think I've already shared things that I didn't cover on Sunday, but this is just an example. And so can we wake up again? We're capable of waking up, but it isn't the body that becomes holy. What will happen is you realize, I don't need to spiritualize my body. My body reflects my consciousness. So as I spiritualize my consciousness and return to divinity, holiness in my mind, a holy belief about myself, holy opinions, no negativity, no judgment, and so on. As I return to this sense of holiness, my body's going to basically follow suit because it is the effect of my consciousness. You could put it in the terms of vibration if you want to. The vibration of my body, the vibration of illness, limitation, density, pain, whatever it happens to be, that vibration isn't fixed by us making the body vibrate higher. It's not necessarily harmful to do things that help the body vibrate higher, but if you don't change the consciousness, the body will start to raise in vibration by you using toning and crystal bowls and cool things. Up it comes, you're done, down it goes. It'll just revert to its original vibration because the things you use are only temporary. So all they can do is, a good way to put it is, to show you your potential. High vibration, here it comes, wow, now get your mind to go, that's what I'm looking for. I want to feel this way all the time. How? Become that vibration. If the vibration is called love, start thinking more lovingly, less judgmentally. If you don't get the consciousness to vibrate there, it's just going to drop again. So that doesn't, that may sound like a sort of a slam on the skills, the tools of vibrational healing. But again, watch a different program if you don't want to hear that sort of thing. But try to stay open-minded, because I'm not dissing vibrational healing. I said use it, but use it to give yourself potentialities to the mind to say, yeah, that's how I want to feel. And that's actually the value we can say that the body and the limited world has, is that it can show us things that we do not like, which means I need to change my consciousness, and it can show us things we do like, which means I need to change my consciousness. So either way, it's just a reflection. This isn't putting down the body. How could I put it down? It's not even real. It's nothing but a hologram. It's not putting down people or density, the dense world. It doesn't exist. It's a hologram. It's only an image coming from our consciousness. And what has to change is the consciousness. You can't fix it from the outside. You can't make the consciousness change. It has to choose to change. You can't go, here it goes, crystal ball, bing, wow, I just made myself into a more loving person. It doesn't happen. And that's why so many people that do such work, they don't necessarily change. They still have rage. They still have human fears and limitations. It's consciousness that has to change. And even those of us that work on consciousness levels, we still have human lives. We still have frustrations and so forth. But it's far more real, permanent, effective, and efficient to change by changing consciousness and not changing the outside. For every 100 attempts you use to change the outside, you could have made that much progress with one shift on the inside. So that's the ratio you could use as an example. Okay, I'm going to look at a couple of the notes that some of you folks said you valued during the talk there. Let's see here. Some of them. One of the questions or comments was that there are people. It's sort of on what I've talked about already. There are people who will choose I'm going to change spiritually. Now that's very rare, believe it or not. You might say, well, that's me. I like to change consciousness. Guys, on planet Earth, it's very, very rare that people actually go after consciousness. When you say prayers, it's usually about stuff you want down here on this level. So it's like, it's separated. There's a chasm here. There's a gap here. Spiritual change, personal change. So some people can say, I'm gonna meditate, I'm gonna make myself not feel pain, I'm gonna, try to become spiritual. Now, it can work that a person does so many disciplines on earth, fasting and this and all these intense things. It has happened that individuals have become spiritual by doing all that hard work. Buddha did it. If you look at the life of Buddha, Buddha's just one example, but a lot of hard work to become spiritualized. It can happen, but the amount of work is absolutely not at all worth it, in the sense that it takes a lifetime. So what I shared on Sunday was that in the Hindu tradition, kept alive by some teachings still today, obviously, in the Hindu tradition, they're not trying to become quickly enlightened like some people, more of the Western world version. Even Christianity, to be quickly born again and now I'm good to go. Even though I'm still going to act the same, I'm somehow forgiven. So that instant thing that we do in the West, just like fast food in the West versus the East, we try that, and that's not really going to work. The Hindu tradition is, just chill and let's talk about this and let's draw this out a little bit and explain that when we came in, the human race came in, we came in and gradually densified, which is true, and we got to our densest point somewhere in the involution of life. We devolved and we came into the illusion of life, and now we're going to turn and evolve out. When is that curve? They call these eras, time periods, lokas. And we reach the kama loka, as some people would put it, and some people might have other terms for it, but we reach this low curve actually in our recent time now. So the Hindu tradition would be saying that we've reached the lowest ebb of human consciousness somewhat recently, and we're now just starting to turn up. Now, some of you would go, great, the turning up, that means it's almost over. No. As A Course in Miracles says, and I remember we shared this a couple days ago in the Course in Miracles online course that we're doing. We're doing a whole year, so join us if you'd like. It's a whole year, deep study. But what Jesus even says in the Course is, this took you millions of years to get this far. Technically, and he's agreeing with the Hindu system, technically it should take you an equal amount of years to come out. He's referring, without people knowing it, you'd have to be, well versed enough to know these various things, how they come together. He's referring to that curve, that learning curve, grading curve. He's referring to that. Now, once you start devoting to your spirituality, it's going to take, and humanity's spirituality, it's going to take an equal number of millions of years to get back out of this. And, fortunately, Buddha and Jesus both, but Buddha said, I don't have that kind of time. Like, Buddha's like, I think people can get enlightened quicker than, so he was actually born into the Hindu system. And so he knew this, and he's like, this is just too much. It takes too long. So he devoted himself, and he went through all the rigors of, I want to get spiritual now, proving that it could be done. But the life he lived is way too extreme for the average human being. So if you start to go, well, I really love Buddha, I love the Buddha consciousness, I love the Buddha concepts, try to live them, and you're going to be like, dealing with failure and feelings of failure and whatever, because of the way it's gone. So instead, we hear something else comes out 2,000 years later, 2,500 years later, called A Course in Miracles, that says, okay, now you guys know, you heard about this system that takes billions and millions of years. Now you also heard about devoting your life, and you could, if you're a really dedicated Buddhist, you could, in one or several lifetimes, instead of thousands of lifetimes, you could pull it off much quicker. And so it sounds good, but then you start practicing and you go, wow, this is it's a bit much. So now all this time later, Course in Miracles comes around and says, you could make a major shift in 1 year of studying A Course in Miracles. A major shift. Now, how much of a shift? He actually says in the book that doing the disciplines and the practices and the study and so forth, they're so advanced, he says, you don't even have to believe them. Just reading them, you're allowing permission for the Holy Spirit or the Divine Mother to come into your consciousness and start weaving, healing, shifting of consciousness into your mind. So it doesn't involve the hours and hours and hours of meditation. You don't have to shave your head. You don't have to fast forever and a day. You don't have to do all this stuff externally. You just have to have a little willingness, and then the most advanced system can come in, and it's not the book, or I'm not trying to like sell people on the book. It's Christ consciousness. It's how to become spiritual in terms of becoming the presence of love. You know, not just duties and studies and memorization of prayers and mantras and yantras and this and that and the other of life. It's becoming this presence of forgiveness. The lack of forgiveness, which is called judgment, is why we're here. Forgiveness gets us out. So you can do forgiveness standing or kneeling, lying, sitting. It's not ritual externally. So this new wave of spirituality that's coming to the world is trying to say, we've done enough with slaying lambs on an altar in the old days. We've done enough with practices externally. And there's nothing wrong with these things like externally, hold a crystal, do a crystal bowl, drink water before you meditate, all these different things that people believe in, as long as you become a more loving, forgiving person. But if you're just doing those things thinking that they're making you holy, it's not going to work. And if it could, it would take you thousands of lifetimes, minimum hundreds of lifetimes, which is better than thousands, of doing all these rituals to gradually get some of it to stick. But why don't we just do what sticks in the first place? Shift consciousness. So that's one of the points I made, is about this involution, evolution, and the quicker route, which is through love and forgiveness. So I'm glad they made a note on that. When I'm talking about forgiveness, it's important to recognize this is not referring to fixing ourselves. Forgiving is not fixing. Fixing is external related. Like for example, if I were trying to practice recovery program of some kind, and I try to make myself not drink, or whatever the addiction is, if I'm trying to make myself not drink, but versus another program called the 12-step program, where you're calling on God to be part of your healing process. There's me trying to fix myself. I don't really need the program and I don't need God. I'm just going to not drink. You're going to make even if you could accomplish it, it's going to be harder, it's going to be less real, less efficient, less effective, and so on, once again. And you're going to be pitted up against just making yourself have what's called behavioral modification, which is actually a very limited shift. So if you chose not to do the program, you say, I'm just going to do it myself, that's not an accident that you're choosing. You're actually confirming how much you fear and or hate God or spirituality or other people. You refuse to become part of a program. You refuse to become part of, I'm going to rely on God to help me with this. I'm just so ego-centered and so selfish that I'm going to make myself do it myself. Now, is there anything wrong with it? Well, heck no. If you accomplish it, at least you stop doing something that was hurting yourself. But if you try that without a belief, a spiritual belief in learning to call upon God, and I've known people that have quit very intense addictions. Very few of these people have accomplished it, but those who did, they accomplished it, but they still had spiritual beliefs that came in over time. They didn't just become stubborn, look at me, I've done it. Those folks are not actually healed. You cannot heal without a healer. The healer is called God. You're only fixed, probably temporarily. And it wouldn't do me any good if I made myself better, fixed myself, but because I made myself not drink, or whatever it is, I now am chewing my nails or replacing it with some other anxiety kind of reaction. That's still not the best. So, I'm looking for a spiritual support system. And the 12-step program, I'm not selling you on the program, I'm just telling you the facts. It is what it is. The program, the sponsors, your colleagues, and of course God is a good trifecta to be able to accomplish that sort of healing. Well, it's the same with spirituality. You try to fix yourself. You try to just do herbal tea or a little yoga and these external things. Those are just kind of behavioral modifications. Change the consciousness, change your heart and soul. Let go of hurts and hates. That will do far more for your overall shifting in life and consciousness than external things. It's really not about how many books you've read, and when you're on the spiritual path, it's common for us to read a lot of books. And I think a lot of them are great. I think a lot of them are fun. And a lot of them are very informative. So reading is great. But when you're reading as you're aligned with God, you're guided as to what to read, which is called more efficient. Instead of buying 50 books to read, and usually you don't get around to all of them, but instead of buying 50 books, you've bought, let's say, 10. And they're 10 that completely opened your mind to great things that will be of value over the years. Where 50 of them, you kind of extracted a bit here and a bit there. You overwhelmed your brain a little bit. You got information that might not even be true or valid, and you now have that in your head, and you're going to have to sort out whether you believe that. It's like it's too much work. I mean, if you want to do it, I think it's fine, because at least you're doing something. It's better reading that than gossip magazines or whatever. But you have another choice, which is, ask for guidance in everything you do. Our holiness, this is kind of cool, because I talk in private sessions, I talk to people about this concept too. They talk about how much they're trying and working on this and that and the other. And please remember that your attempt to be a better person, like, every week that I have sessions, and I have them every week, but every week I'm having sessions, and somebody more than one is going to say, I'm trying to do this, or I'm trying to do that, or I'm trying to really love myself more. I'm trying to nurture more self-worth, or I'm trying to raise my prosperity level by doing positive thinking affirmations, or whatever. It's all a lot of doing. And then I'm saying to them consistently, and I'm also sharing with you, if you don't know who you are, it's harder to convince yourself that you're lovable. What you're doing is, again, behavioral modification. You're making yourself repeat, I am wonderful. I am wonderful. Now, you would have to repeat it 100 times to get an ounce of it to stick, believe it or not. It takes a bit, because you're really fighting thoughts that, to the contrary, thoughts that say I'm not lovable. For every time you say I'm lovable, guys, there's 10 pieces of evidence to the contrary. I'm lovable. Then why was I sleeping with those weirdos? I'm lovable, but why don't I eat better? I'm lovable, but yeah, you do drink too much. I'm lovable, but my father told me he didn't like me. I mean, you have so many programs against it. Healing and forgiveness helps release those resistors, those saboteurs inside, so that it could make your messages to yourself, I'm lovable, stick a bit more. But also, what will help it more efficiently and effectively is, instead of just fixing, healing the unhealthy stuff underneath it that's trying to sabotage it, instead of just working on that, also work on the affirmation, I'm lovable. Who are you talking about? Well, me. You mean the you that wasn't lovable is now lovable? Yeah, that's what I mean. Well, that's not good, because then you're still associating with the unlovable that's now lovable. All you did is make the unlovable a bit more lovable. It's kind of better. But you're trying to still fix someone that has a past, someone that has healing to do, forgiveness to do, etc., etc. There is another option, which is, if you knew who you really were, you couldn't be unlovable. You couldn't not be lovable. It would be impossible if you know who you are. Okay, well, then I know who I am and I'm lovable. You can't just say it. The only way you can know who you are is twofold. Healing that which isn't lovable, yes. But the second part isn't you asserting your lovability. It's actually you allowing, not asserting, you allowing the voice, the mind of God to speak into your mind to say how lovable you are. That's why calling in a feeling of peace and joy. You know, I'm getting an idea that maybe tomorrow or Sunday, it's 2 days from now, at the Sunday service, unless something else comes, maybe I'm going to just talk about our divine identity, which is similar to today, but I would like to launch into identity. That's just what's coming to me. But if you're liking this talk, then join us again Sunday. If you're not liking this talk, then bye. So at the same time, we're going into this idea that what does it really mean to know who I am, my lovability? So I would just say to you this: if you have a child of yours that you love, and the child says, but why do you love me? It's kind of hard to put into words. But if you said, well, because you're my child, I'd be like, if I was the child, so it's only because I'm your child? And it's hard to explain that, because yes, because you're my child, but hopefully as a soul, a parent, the soul in me would be willing to say, I love you because I'm choosing to see your divinity. The namaste statement, that the divine in me is honoring and acknowledging the divine in you. So I should come from that spiritual place to that child. And if the child said, but if you had another child, would you love it too? Yes. And the child could say, well, then you're not making me feel special, which is an egotistic response that most children would have, or parents would have, partners would have, and so on. I want to be special. I can't make you special. You're holy. How could I make you more than holy? Holy comes from the word whole, which is complete. So I can only love you as a holy being, and I wholly love you. My holiness acknowledges the holiness in you, and I love you wholly. How can I do more than that? Well, I want you to love me a little more wholly than you love somebody else. No, it's just perfect. So the human mind is having a struggle comprehending, absorbing, and integrating this concept of true love, real love. So it's just something to see if you can wrap your mind around that and know God has this perfect, holy love for me. And it made me in its image. And if God is holy, which it is, if God is love and peace and joy and abundance, which it is, so am I, because I'm made in its image. So I don't actually need to fight to find my worth and my value. So the more I'm doing to have value, I'm going to put in double the hours this week, I'm going to make more money, and then I'm going to be the number one salesperson, and then I'm going to probably get a raise, and then they're going to move me to the New York skyscraper, and then I'm going to make even more money, etc., 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 or whatever your version of ambition would be. You're doing. And the more you do, the more you're confirming that you are not. If I am, I don't need to do so much. And whatever I do would come from my I am. So if I know who I am, the doing comes from that. And then it's far more centered, far more guided, inspired. It's far more efficient, and so on. So it's a beautiful thing. It doesn't mean you don't do anything. It means the doings come far more efficiently because they're coming from inspiration rather than compensation. All right? Some of the notes that we covered on Sunday, I'm going to just cover just a few more. There were some funny things I think I said that some people made note of. So I don't think I will cover those right now. But let's see. Let go of the roles and the dramas and the karma, even towards ourselves. That's still the doing. You and I invented karma, and as soon as you died, after inventing karma, as soon as you died once, you now had to create reincarnation, which is karma part 2. It's like a sequel, a never-ending sequel. So pretty soon, before you know it, you're in Rocky 15, life, and they're not getting better. These sequels, they're not, they're just typically not better. you kind of lose it when you hit Rambo 15, Rocky 15, and it's not dissing those movies. It's any movie that just goes on and on and on. It can get old, and by the same token, lifetime after lifetime after, and thank God, but not that we create this another thing, which is a problem, amnesia, so that we don't realize how exhausted we are from having to reincarnate again and again. So even though we go, God, I wish I knew my past lives. No, if you really wished you knew them, you would know them. People conveniently want to forget their past lives because you don't want to think you're going to marry the same nutcase again. And I'm not saying that everybody that marries a nutcase. These are just my playful ways of saying things. But you don't want to know that. I mean, it would be kind of weird to think somebody you married was once your mother. You don't want to believe that somebody that was once your child is now your mother. It's too bizarre on the mind. So we conveniently forget, which is really more of a ignoring, but it's a convenient amnesia. And so we learn that as we discover our value, we don't mind that some karma comes up to be burned off. Some lessons come up to be learned. Some healings come up to be healed. And so we don't mind that. We don't get triggered that these things come to us, but we no longer live by them. We don't say, well, oh, okay, probably just another 1,000 lifetimes. You live in the moment and you disperse that stuff. You let them come to you and you disperse them. That's what it means to be gaining holiness and enlightenment. It doesn't mean being mad that you have karma, but it doesn't mean you also try to pretend you don't have it. It's neither extreme. If it's there, bring it on. I don't care. I'm just here. And stuff comes, you just disperse it as it comes, like a beautiful wizard just waving the hand and sparkles of light just dispersing. It would be nice if it seemed that easy, of course. It doesn't always come across that, that blissful, but it is like that. It's just like, bring it on. And, and I remember when I ended the Sunday talk, something that just popped into my mind. I repeated something that I often repeat, which is, do not rate your spirituality by whether or not you have stuff happen. Michael's talking about holiness and humanness, and I need to not have any humanness. That's not how it works. I know it sounds like that's what I'm saying, but it isn't. It's learning to access your holy consciousness while you're in your humanness. It's not get me out of this place. That sort of dissociation, denial, it would actually betray the fact that you're afraid of the stuff of the humanness. Get me out of here. And that's what a lot of mystics did. No, I mustn't, and instead it's bringing the presence to everything through forgiveness, but bringing the presence, even if it's not in the words of forgiveness, do it just through intention. You go to eat foods, don't pray to be protected by the evils of the foods. Pray to be in divine consciousness so that foods are happy to enter your system. Let the little particles within those foods dance with delight to dance with your holy cells. Believe that. Believe that. That it's not like saying, well, you're lucky to be in my presence. Oh, slice of pizza. You're not doing that. It's more just, I'm so grateful to be in this space. Father, Mother, God, be in me, as me, through me now, as I engage, indulge in this food. And I give thanks that the food will have everything symbolically that this body believes it needs or whatever at this time. It's just this dance. It's a joyful kind of a experience. The same goes for parenting. The same goes for buying houses and cars, the things you have to do in life. The same thing goes for filing bankruptcy. God, I wish I didn't have to sit in this courtroom. This is humiliating. This is a drag. Your job is not to talk about all the things that you don't like about it. Your job, you could do that, but do it as though you're putting it on the altar. Don't do it to commiserate. Do it to say, God, this is, I can't believe this. And I wouldn't be having to go through this filing bankruptcy if it weren't for my dad did this, or my partner took me for everything, my husband, wife, go ahead and get all that out. Write it all down while you're sitting in court waiting for your turn. All the people that you think wronged you and you're ticked off at. And then at some point, be willing to, I put it all down, now fold it up. You can't light it on fire while you're in the courtroom, but you'll burn it later. But fold it up and say, now I'm going to put this on the altar, God. These are my former ego-based thoughts and opinions, humanness that I put on paper. That's number one. Boom, let it out. Put it on the altar. 2, give it to God. 3, replace it. Replace it with what? Well, what do I really want to feel? Peace and happiness. I want to feel love and abundance. I want to feel like a fresh start. Whatever words come to you, then call them in and let them come from God. So now you're taking what was a humanness and you're turning it into a human version of a holiness. I say a human version meaning because you're not completely like suddenly enlightened and illuminated and ascending to the highest heavens. I just mean that you're bringing holiness right to this moment. That's partly what it means to be in the moment. In the moment doesn't mean, oh, look at me. Isn't it great how I just speak monotone because I'm in the moment? I don't have any flexion, in my voice, because inflections of any kind, because I'm just so damn centered. Look at me. And I don't even move much to the right or left because I'm so always centered. And, I'm a real bummer at parties, and you probably would hate to make love to me because I'm just always like this. It's like, you got to be kidding me. Centered, being in the moment does not mean this like little fabricated version. Being in the moment isn't actually you doing anything other than surrendering your doing. So being in the moment, I could do a talk just on that, and I think I have, but in doing so, I would clearly have to make fun of all the false versions of the so-called being in the moment. So it's, being in the moment means in this moment, I'm surrendering that which is not in the moment, which is my ego that tells me about how I am a separated being. And it always gains its evidence from the past. The ego cannot, in the moment, gather evidence, because in the moment, I get to choose whether I want to buy the past or be born again for the future. So the ego cannot access information here. It has to pull it from here, because here I'm clean. I'm always having a clean start every second, but I'm not allowed to see it based on my ego. I'm not allowed. It only wants to clutter the present with past evidence, piles and piles of evidence as to how I'm not lovable, how I'm just a mere mortal. And at the end of the day, even if I become Saint Francis or I become Buddha or I become Mother Teresa or whomever, I still end up dying at the end, because even Buddha died. And it's like, well, dang, what was all that fasting for? I even shaved my head. This is like crazy. Like, I've become such a good, clean person. I've helped lepers like Mother Teresa, and I still died. And sometimes painfully so. The channel of A Course in Miracles, the lady, she didn't practice the Course, but she channeled the Course and died. Edgar Cayce in all his brilliance. My God, the dude could do readings and do healing on anybody. And, still the humanist. John of God, an incredible healer, effective, authentic, actual healing of people that were mild illnesses or major illnesses. And he still, as a human being, he still misbehaved because ego leaks through. Now, does that mean you should throw out, if you had a healing from him, should you doubt it and try to make yourself sick again because you don't like his behaviors as a human being? No. Buddha, the fact that he died shouldn't make you lose faith in him as a teacher, but he's a teacher. He is not at the highest level of consciousness, despite what you might think. If he was, he wouldn't have died. Then you could say, well, what about Jesus if he died? What about Enoch or Elijah? They didn't die. They actually just ascended. That's right. They just ascended. They didn't die. That's a great kudos to them. It's evidence of something. But Jesus too. he died. Yeah, he did. And then he resurrected himself, which is actually quite a thing that, hadn't been done. It was kind of quite original. So divine consciousness, man, it can do anything, because divine consciousness looks at the human world like the opposite of the iceberg concept. The tip of the iceberg is the human self. All the power of divinity behind our divinity is this wide, and we're talking about this world having power over us. It's actually ludicrous, and for lack of a better word, it is insane to think that this is so. But it doesn't feel insane. Why? Because when you're looking at the ocean surface, and we like to look only at the surface of life, you think you're saying, well, it looks like that's the whole thing. Of course we know an iceberg is going to have so much more under it, but the average person, and if you show an average person, if they see it for the first time, or a child, look at that. What they're going to look at is the thing exposed to the eyes. And that's what the ego constantly does, is keep everything focused on that which seems evident. That's where that word evidence comes from. That which seems evident, and it not only seems evident, it's used as evidence against us that we're not holy, because our holiness is hidden beneath the surface. Can't see it, therefore it can't be true, which is not true. It's not an accurate statement. It's a logical statement because it seems to be true. Logic is something that seems to be true, but it isn't always true. And that's why we can say that something can seem logical, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's rational. Rational coming from that word rationale, like the actual truth behind it that supports it. All right? So as I'm starting to wrap up, I'm sure, I most of what I'm saying here wasn't covered. The concept was covered on Sunday, but I know that I'm not following the notes you guys gave me, and that's just the way it goes. I apologize if that bothers you, but it's the best I could do right now, because I just love to just go with the inspirations. And when I got to the end, I remember I mentioned that one of the things about getting from humanness to holiness, one of the other things is really about attachment. Attachment is humanness related. Non-attachment is holiness related. Now I said non-attachment. I didn't say detachment, because detachment is really still being caught up with the concept of attachment. You're trying to not, be attached. You're trying to detach. So you're still fighting attachment. So it's still part of the ego pendulum. There's a difference. So the humanness gets attached and detached. The holiness knows non-attachment. And attachment has not once in history not caused pain of some level. Attachment means there's going to be pain, because whatever you attach to, first of all, isn't real. Secondly, doesn't have the value you're putting on it. And third, will end at some point. So it's going to cause pain. Non-attachment, on the other hand, has never once in history caused pain. So it seems like if you have to choose between two, you could tell a 5-year-old, hey, this is called attachment, it causes pain. This is called non-attachment, and it brings bliss. Which one would you want? They don't have to be well studied. They're going to go, well, that one. Clear. But nobody chooses that one. I say nobody, it's a figure of speech. People generally don't pick that one. It's just so ludicrous, because they're looking at the tip of the iceberg as being their reality rather than the unseen, which is why you hear in the Gospels, blessed are those who believe and don't see. Or another part of the Gospels that, that faith is believing in the unseen versus the seen. I'm paraphrasing, but it's along those lines. So that's a bit, what it's like in this concept of attachment and non-attachment. And another point, one of the things when I closed, I kind of shared that even personally in my life, as a kid, I understood, I knew of these concepts, but there was really nobody that was able to teach them so clearly. It was like, you're hearing words about non-attachment, attachment, and all these things, but it didn't seem like people actually got it, practiced it, understood it. And of course, A Course in Miracles came out in the 70s, and that made a major change in human consciousness to understand these things a bit more without so much hoopla and ritual and years of investment. So that helped when I saw that first came out. I got into it. But I remember in raising kids at that time in my early 20s, I can say to you that since nobody taught how to be it, the holiness, then I was still trying to make the humanness holy. So, because that's what people said, that's how you did it. The teachers, that's as enlightened as teachers generally are, that's what they think you do. Religious leaders, mystics, I mean, that's what they think you do. And it's better than nothing, but it isn't the answer. So, I did what I could, raising my kids. I thought, I'm going to raise them spiritually. And you do all these things to make spiritual the human. You can bring holiness to the human, I said that earlier, but you can't make the humanness holy per se. There's a difference. One is trying to make the problem somehow justifiable in the solution, and it isn't. It doesn't blend. Water and oil kind of concept. But the other way around is you focus on the holiness and you bring that to the now, to this moment, and it shines light on the illusions and the humanness, and then that which is unholy sort of disperses. But not being taught that when I was 20, it's really the Holy Spirit that had to teach me that. I don't know of any person that I've ever heard explain that so well, so well meaning the way that the Holy Spirit did it. So I just know that I juggled this stuff and I played with this stuff and I tried to think a certain way, live a certain way, whatever, doings externally. And at the end of the day, my children still had free will. They still had their own karma. They still had their own lives, their own paths, their own lessons. And that was a devastating reality to experience. And it was a good one. It's painful, but it was only painful because of my attachment to the idea that I'm doing the highest thing that I'm told you can do. Make holy the humanness. I'm not interested in the humanness, the density, the limitation, the pain, the hurt, the suffering. I'm into, let's spiritualize it. And it wasn't explained. It doesn't work. So I spiritualized it as best I could, and it's better than nothing because it puts some dressing on it. It looks better. But if you don't let the look send a trigger to the consciousness and change the consciousness, then you start to become attached to the thing called the external shift. So I got my kids and and I raise them well, and I read them beautiful stories every night. Not read, but I actually used to just channel them, stories spontaneously. It was kind of fun. And, all that. But it was still doing, so it had to fail at some point. And when it failed, it's like, God, the things they went through, various traumas in their life with other people and all that, and hurts, and it just devastated me because I was trying to live this beautiful, miraculous, magical bubble around them and saying, see, we've spiritualized the humanness. Then pop, something pops that bubble, and it was painful. It was all part of my first major dark night of the soul too. But the bubble got popped, and I'm saying this to you not to belabor stories like this of my past, but to say we all try that without realizing it. We try, at best, we're trying to spiritualize things. You think that if you can make your partner wear purple, they're somehow more spiritual. You buy them a crystal for their birthday or for your celebration of your anniversary or whatever. And you're just thinking it's going to be, great. Now they're going to be more spiritual. And then they hawk it for some more heroin or something, and you're devastated. But you're trying to fix them or fix the relationship so that you can say, whew, we got it. And it didn't work. So, and we all do that in different ways. So it's not a bad thing. Buy them a crystal. Let them wear purple. Do what you want to do externally, but don't neglect the internal shift. That has to happen. And that's going to happen by being the example of, I don't just buy crystal, I also am a more loving person. I demonstrate the love through forgiveness primarily. And forgiveness can take the form of patience and tolerance, and it's a nicer personality. But I also believe it takes the form of being inspired more often. Like, forgiveness doesn't just mean you overlook or whatever kinds of problems. Forgiveness also makes you a clearer channel. So to me, your art should be changed, your parenting should be changed, lovemaking should be changed. Everything should be changed when you're practicing that, that vibe of forgiveness. So last but not least, if there is something else that triggers my mind here, let's see. Heaven on earth cannot be made. It comes from a state of mind. And that's what I've been saying all along. And last but not least, just the reminder that, is this a lot of hard work? Yeah, it can seem like it. The more attached I am over here, the harder it's going to be to become non-attached. If I can start forgiving and consciously choosing, through forgiveness and consciously choosing, to let go of attachments, kind of learning to say, oh, well, there might be a greater purpose, or I'm just trusting in Christ to guide me, or the Holy Spirit to guide me. Putting trust in God and so forth will help you ease up on the attachments. Is there any work at all still? Yeah, it's going to be some work to shift from my addiction to attachments to a non-attachment, life. But remember this, that whatever amount of work it takes, might take, does take, has taken, will take, remember that statement that Jesus said, this is going to happen. You're going to have challenges, but don't let it overly worry you, because I've already overcome the world. Why is he saying I've already overcome it? That's like us then saying, good for you, Jesus. How's that going to help me today? Well, it does, because the mind that was in Christ, Jesus, is the same Christ mind I can put on. So if Jesus got it by putting on the Christ mind, then I too can have that by putting on the Christ mind. And partly I do that by trusting in the Christ or the Holy Spirit. Use a name, God, whatever you want to use, but use something as profound and high as possible. Don't settle for just your deceased relative guides as your highest form of channeling or guidance in the world. Go to God, man, in some really profound form. Go to God, go to the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit's also known as the Divine Mother. Or go to Christ, which is also known as Jesus, because Jesus remembered he's Christ. So he has a unique role in that sense. But he also remembered he's Christ, and he's wanting me to remember. So he's not trying to make me into Jesus. He's trying to make me into Christ as a consciousness. So pick whatever ally feels right for you, but go as high as you can in calling in your ally and let it guide you through attachments, through addictions, through lessons in life, and through the forgiveness process. Alrighty? Thank you so much. That gives at least the content, the concept of what I covered Sunday for those of you interested. For those of you who don't care whether it was Sunday or not, you just like to talk, great. Thank you for digging this, because most of what I just shared was kind of just spontaneous, other than those few quotes that I decided to go back to so that I get some referencing. All right? Thank you. And just in closing, an announcement or two now. Bear with me, this will only take a second. First of all, I always love when I remember, just thanking you folks for being part of the program that we do here, the Friday Night Spiritual Insights. Remember, you can also join us with the Sunday morning, 10:15 Arizona time. Always remember to check Arizona timing, because it's different than Mountain and Central and whatever else, okay? Pacific, Eastern. Also, I'm going to share with you that in a matter of a few weeks, I'm doing a great program about The Shack, the movie and the book called The Shack, doing it with the author, Paul. And Paul's a wonderful soul. Paul Young, he's a wonderful soul. Honest to God, he's probably, in all the spiritual teachers, channels, authors that I've ever met, he and Alan Cohen are up there as the number one, tied for number one. And I don't know, there might be, things that differ in theories, beliefs, whatever. It doesn't matter. Both very deeply spiritual people and very deeply practicing what they believe, what they talk and preach and write. And so anyway, Paul Young's just an incredible soul. And the times I've sat with him, I'm not telling you that it's like sitting with like the Dalai Lama, because that doesn't necessarily, no offense, impress me as much. People with a status, that's nice, but do they live it? Would some spiritual mentor, gurus to some people, sit down and chat the way humans can chat? No, a lot of them won't and don't, and that doesn't impress me. So Paul Young, I just couldn't believe the integrity and the clarity of the guy. He's just amazing. But we're going to do a workshop. The workshop is sort of the shack experientially. It's putting it to an experiential program. So it's going to involve, because the shack is like going to a place where you have all your secrets and they have to be brought out. So we're going to experimentally deal with the shack, but in the shack, in the story, the movie, the book, it's also the guy that goes into the shack with a deep, dark night of the soul ends up encountering God and being taught how to forgive more. It's just beautiful. So we're going to walk through that together. You're going to take things in your life experientially, go through them like a psychodrama in a sense. Go through them with us. There'll be some lecture to that effect, but really also using the metaphor of the shack experience. And so that'll be quite profound. Join us. That's a few weeks from now. There's probably a link or something posted that you can go to. I think it's February 9th, if I'm not mistaken, but check the program, check the whatever is posted. But it's a few weeks away. So join us if you can. It's, I don't know, it's probably around $50 or whatever it is, but it's around that for the whole afternoon that we're going to do. So well worth it. And if you can't, for some reason, make it, the video will be in the program anyway, so you can still watch it later. You register, sign up, and then you can watch it later. Worst case scenario, though, which is a great case scenario, make sure you pick up a copy of The Shack or watch the movie, because, oh my God, man, I mean, I can't even tell you I saw it and I thought, what is this? Not knowing at the time, because I saw just a few minutes, and I thought, this is like deep. I couldn't believe what I was watching. And then later on, I started catching on what I think I saw. I think this is that shack. Saw a few more minutes of it, and I went, oh my God. And I could see a resistance to watching it because of some of the scenes of the trauma the guy went through. They hit close to home in a way. And I thought, oh man, this is really hard to watch. So I watched myself navigate whether I was going to watch it or not. Then the third time around, it's starting from the beginning. So now I'm like, okay, let's do it. And and it's just awe-inspiring. The depths of the dark night will probably bring up that he went through some tears for you, but the awe moments of meeting God and what it means, and such a practical way of explaining it. I know it sounds like I have a little crush on Paul or the book and movie, but it's a good crush. It's a good thing to have because it's so incredible. And I was so impressed with it. So anyway, many blessings to you. Thank you for joining us. You are welcome to make a donation to this program, but it's not mandatory by any stretch. But you're welcome to make a donation to this program. We would greatly appreciate it. All right. God bless. Many blessings to you in every way possible. I thank you for being with us. Bye-bye.